Hi everyone, my name is Ivan Sergejev and I'm an architect. I'm based in Tallinn, Estonia, and I'm going to talk about some existential questions, as you can see today. Which one to be, or to be or not to be, fast and curious? Well, I think the question actually, there is no question. Of course you need to be fast and curious, but the question is that enough? You need to be fast in the modern world, as David was saying earlier, with all the developments and everything that's going on with the world. You need to stay on top of things. No wonder then that in one of my favorite books by Marshall Berman, All That Is Solid Melts into Air, Mr. Berman discusses the state of modernity and illustrates it with Faust's story. And what he says is that in the modern times, the most valuable commodity is speed. First of all, speed has its uses. Anyone who wants to do great things in the world will need to have, or to move around and through it fast. On the other hand, he's saying that speed generates a distinctly sexual aura. The faster Faust can race along, the more of a real man, the more masculine, more sexy he can be. And who doesn't want to be sexy, right? I mean, no-brainer. But at the same time, there are caveats which we need to discuss with that. For example, as the first example I'll give you, or story, it's my slight obsession with Wikipedia back when I was in college. So on Saturday mornings, I would wake up and I would go to the office and, kind of log onto my computer and start talking, or start reading through Wikipedia articles. Just choose a random topic, for example, string theory, and then read all through it. And you know how it goes with the Wikipedia. You go to a topic, you start reading, and then you're like, oh, who is, Stephen Hawking? And then you click on that, and then you go there, you read there, then you find something else, and you just keep clicking around, being all fast and curious out of your mind. But one specific occasion I remember kind of turned the world upside down for me is when I met up with a friend right after reading string theory specifically. I thought that I was so smart. Like, I knew everything about string theory because I've read through the entire article. Like, that's it, And then I meet with a friend of mine who actually studied theoretical physics and applied math in Cambridge. And obviously, I couldn't hold up a 10-minute conversation about string theory. So the takeaway is that if you actually want to know something or study something, you need to dedicate your time to it. I don't know how many of you guys have seen the movie Weatherman, or The Weatherman. The movie itself is, so-so, but there is a few good pearls in it, and one of those things, basically the story is about a guy who works as a weatherman. He has a dad who's dying of cancer, and his dad wants to, the weatherman's family is falling apart, his career isn't moving quite as well as it's supposed to, and then his dad gives him advice on, on his family and marriage, and he's saying, to get anything of value, you have to sacrifice. And what is it that we sacrifice most of the time? It is time. That is our lifetime. And we're really slow and scared of making this commitment of sacrificing our lifetime to something specific. But I mean, it probably becomes no surprise, but that's what you need to do. For example, let's take architecture, right? I'm an architect, so that's the thing closest to my heart. And architecture, we produce a lot of crazy concepts, like I'm going to show you later. And architecture has a pretty glamorous kind of thing going about it. But the reality of architecture is that fast and curious, or like this whole craziness that we do, it's actually, I don't know, a tiny bit of what we actually produce in the end. Because the most part is taken up by the actual production of drawings, production of renderings, problem solving, how does this beam hit this wall and is that good, and all of that kind of stuff, without even needing to speak about the actual construction process that can take years. So, for those of you who do architecture, maybe that's the story you know more, but let's not talk about that right now. For example, the crazy concepts I've been talking about, right? Like, for example, some of my own stuff is, utopian buildings that probably could only exist on Mars, or in outer space, or even on Earth. But the thing that is important is that even in glamorous professions, at least that's what they tell us, like architecture, you need to know when to be fast and when to be slow, and you need to know and come to terms with the fact that whatever you're doing is going to hit the slow-mo at some point. So for example, I'll illustrate that on the example of my thesis, which I did at Virginia Tech in 2012. For a thesis, I was researching data centers. Not a very typical typology to research for an architecture student. Usually you go for, a private house or something that is actually, where people live in. But the thing that fascinated me about data centers is that those things exist and they control our lives to a huge extent, right? We all have phones, which are in, we hold our materials in the cloud and all of that. But where is that cloud? And then it wasn't until I was only pondering with those ideas, but it wasn't until I got an internship in New York and saw this building, the AT&T Long Lines building, that I really started thinking about this topic. Because this building it's a skyscraper. It stands in the middle of in the middle of Tribeca on some of the most expensive land in New York, but still it has no windows or doors. When I saw it first, I was like, what is this? Went onto Wikipedia and started researching. The reply I got from there was that it's being converted into a data center. It used to be a telephone switching tower. So from that, it's a massive monolith of a building that is pretty exciting. But the thing about it is that it's just standing there and it's totally blank. So why can't things like that, which are sculptures, effectively speaking, they're filled with stuff that we cannot see, the stuff that can be arranged in a lot of different ways. Why does it have to be anonymous? Why can't it become something interesting? Yeah, see, here's a more typical example of a data center. So what I did was, after doing a lot of research, I chose a site, again in New York, and I thought, okay, let me design a data center for here. So I go through, a number of the standard architectural process, the exciting part. You make models, you see which ones work, then I choose one of them, and then I continue, with this. I make models in different shapes and sizes, different materials, try to figure out what is the best way for me to design this building. And then start to rationalize it a little bit, where the views come from, how do the people get on top, because the point was, if it's sculpture, then why can't we, occupy it? Why can't we crawl on it? Why can't we take a look at New York from it, and so on and so forth? Started getting into a little bit of detail. So you see how the time starts to stretch out, right? The first models were really fast, probably took me an hour to come up with those, but then the rest of the process stretches over days and weeks. And then guess what? I go back to the site and I find out that, whoops, it's huge, and I don't like it. And in architecture, that's about enough of a data point to start doubting your entire thesis. So I go back to to my desk and I start doing it all over again. Finally come up with a new design. I like the whole amorphous shape, so I stick with that. I develop it further into a more, into a model of higher resolution. I try to model it in a 3D software. Eventually, take a look at the program if everything fits, accessibility requirements, go as deep down as facade details and the inside workings of a data center and how it could be put together. So pretty technical. In the end, come up with drawings which are sections and plans and renderings of this specific building. But and it all seems like it's progressing really smoothly. But the reality of it is that the concept itself, the fast and curious, the exploration part, happened within hours. But then after that, the entire process that I thought was worthy of continuing took days, weeks, and then later months to actually get at something that you can present and talk about. So the idea itself isn't really worth much. What is worth much is the end result. However, in architecture, and I'm sure in a lot of other professions too, we keep, everything is interrelated. So as I illustrated with my first example, right, I started with a different concept. I developed it to a certain level, and then suddenly I realized it wasn't good, so I needed to switch back. And then, so every new step you take, it feeds into the previous stages, and then the previous stages influence and inform the final stage, and so on and so forth. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that although it's pretty linear, seems like, actually one needs to know when to switch modes, because you have to do that anyway. When do you switch from creative and fast to the deep? Then once you've done the deep, you need to go back and reevaluate whatever you've done so far, go back to the, to the slow-mo, and you have to be okay with that. So how does one learn when to be fast and when to be slow. That is, I think that is one of the critical and one of the most overlooked skills, probably, that we need to have. For some of us, it's kind of like, duh, of course you need to switch into the actual production mode in the end. But I can't stress this point enough. It cannot be fast and curious forever, and whatever you do, it is going to take time in the end. So as an example of this thought, I'll tell you about my application to the Office for Metropolitan Architecture that you guys might be aware of. It's an architecture office, one of the leading architecture offices in the world, and I got an internship there at some point. But the interesting part about it is that my path there. Basically, it all started in the second year of architecture school for me. I saw their building the first time. I fell in love with the work of the office. Let me just keep that slide on for now. And then every summer, I've been crafting an application to get there. But it's a super competitive office. I think the average competition to get there is like 250 people per one spot. That's the average. And so I constantly felt like I wasn't good enough. I was doing this work, and every new year, I was thinking, all right, now I'm sitting down and writing that application. And I did, and then I just couldn't press that send button because I was like, not quite there yet. Eventually, it took me 6 years to get there. I was finishing my grad school at Virginia Tech, and I was thinking, all right, this is the time when I apply. So I crafted a proper letter of motivation. I put together my portfolio, everything tip-top, sent it out through the online system, and then I sit and wait. So the fast and curious ended, and then the excruciating pain of waiting began. And week goes by, nothing. Second week goes by, nothing again. Third week goes by, nothing. And at some point, I think I just kind of lost my temper or something, but on a Saturday night at 7 p.m., I sat down and I started browsing through the partners of the office and what they do and stuff. And I found one of the partners' personal email address. So I write this, and obviously while I was waiting for 3 weeks, I was writing letters to other companies to see if I can get in there, because obviously the probability of me getting in to OMA is nil, or almost nil. So I write a bunch of letters every day, and I send them out, and at some point I realized I'm like, all the stuff that I'm writing is just so similar, and I must be receiving so much of the similar stuff. So what I did, I wrote this totally insane letter to one of the partners of the office. And just to give you an idea of how insane it was, the topic was no BS cover letter, and it was structured in bullet points. Because those people who do work all over the globe, they really don't have time to read through my beautifully written letter of motivation. So bullet points is how they think. So I put that together, I sent it out Saturday night. Monday 10 a.m., I received a phone call saying, come in for an interview. I'm not sure which part they saw and why they invited me for an interview, but I think it's both. And the slow and excruciating, and then like in a month, I get the internship, and then I'm in the place of my dreams, right? But the important thing is that for me to get there, it took me 6 years. And then the actual decision took 2 days, and then a month of them to decide. So basically, the takeout, or whatever, not takeout, but takeaway from all this conversation is that only being fast and curious is not enough, because you're not actually going anywhere. You're in Browning motion, but you're not actually going in any specific direction. The second thing is, to get anything of value, you need to invest your time in it, and that's okay. If you think something is worthy of it, go for it. Because otherwise, again, you're just standing. And do not give up when stuff that matters takes time, because it will. The world might be not as fast and curious as you are, and sometimes things just do take time because the structures are big that we're trying to engage. And the idea that I want to leave you guys with is that there is a time to be slow, and then there's a time to be fast and curious. Both are equally important, and you need to know when to switch your modes. Thank you very much.